What's really going on, everyone? Back again with another episode. Before we get into all of the latest news, be sure to follow us on all of our social media at WRGO Pod. That includes Instagram, X, and TikTok. Be sure to like, listen, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That includes, most importantly, YouTube or wherever you listen to audio podcasts. Mackenzie and Henry, how are we, my friends?
Doing good. Doing good. I'm so happy it's finally starting to get a little warm. So I'm in a good mood.
It is.
Facts. Yeah, I can't complain. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
There we go. Well, we can just get right into it. This was a article that has been kind of through my Twitter feed, at least, or X feed, has been blowing up. There was a New York Times article that was written late last month about Black men in college. So the article found that only 19% of students at Howard University are Black, whose enrollment levels at four-year colleges have plummeted across the board, including PWIs. Black men represent currently 26% of HBCU students, down from 38% in 1976. There are about as many non-Black students attending HBCUs as Black men. It's a crazy stat that the article uncovered. Some of the causes that they talked about in the article were higher college costs, financial needs of Black families, higher suspension rates in high school in particular, especially among Black men, and negative messages about potential academic success and potential for Black men. One thing that is worth noting is that while all of this is happening, the Trump administration recently cut 600 million in teacher training grants that were designed to place teachers in underserved schools and diversify the educational workforce. So I feel like this has been one of those topics where everyone has kind of had their say and their thought on it, which I think some have been productive. I think most have actually been very unproductive personally. We kind of had our own debate about it, but who wants to kick off the conversation? I think we can focus on, what can we do to grow the rates, and what do you think the biggest problems are in terms of why they're there now?
I want to
Um,
hear from the men first.
well, I was about to go before
Oh,
you butted in.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Endo.
I'm glad you kicked the conversation off of like, what can we do? Because I
Hmm.
think the conversation should be focused,
Yeah.
considering like we all can kind of talk about the barriers.
Hmm.
However, it's on us as Black men to kind of like fill the gaps, whether that's mentoring, teaching more, and being present in the household. I do kind of hate the mentality of like, well, like, where's that daddy? But like, other people can have influence on a young
Hmm.
man's journey. We were kind of to some degree talking about this in the barbershop like maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, but they were talking about basically Anthony, the guy who's having all those kids,
Hmm. Hmm.
and like his journey. And I'm not sure if he went to college or not, but
1 year.
right, so like he's got all this money, he's this big superstar. One would assume he would be taking more financial like better steps financially in terms of like how he's having babies and just being like a better figure, but he is young, so like give him the benefit of the doubt to some degree. However, it is like if you want to just identify a person like that versus like a person who is, just coming from a regular family who doesn't really have like many opportunities, do they take college? I don't want to say for granted, but like, do they value it the same as
Hmm.
some people? Because we don't know what their circumstances is, but I know, like, I mean, you needed money in college, you need money in life, and that's probably like their first mindset is how can I get to the money? And I do think between like, pipeline in prison and then having that mindset just in general as a Black man, those two things kind of conflate. And I also think the not having like strong male figures, like even in the media plays a big part in this also
Hmm.
because they don't project successful Black men. I tell Noah this all the time, but that like Robert Johnson. Um,
Yeah, yeah, I knew
and
exactly where you were going.
I didn't know who he was. See, Mackenzie faces like, who is that? That dude.
No, I'm like, what are you about to say?
I didn't know who he was until he paid off those that tuition at Morehouse.
Mm-hmm.
That what it was that 2019.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for men like that to not be in, I don't want, yeah, in prominent access to some degree, to where I can see myself in that spot. Like Noah has even said, I think on the podcast, he didn't want to get into politics until he seen somebody like Barack Obama.
Hmm.
So until you can sometimes see yourself in a space, it is hard to navigate to that space. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've been thinking about a lot is I think of course I think focusing it like we always do on this podcast, try to focus it at least inward to some degree. Because I think the thing that I was referencing earlier, I think the thing that I don't like is that I think everyone is kind of projecting it outward by just describing the problem without necessarily figuring out like how do we actually like change it. And at least like for someone like me, like granted, like none of us have children. But I think especially like for you and me, Henry, like we've talked about this a lot of at least how can, and I've even had to like challenge myself and like I'm frankly part of the problem. And I think it's also like being able to understand that like, hey, the things in which we're all currently doing, which are all choices of economics, is not good enough. Or I can't then complain and say like, hey, these rates are good enough without actually questioning like, hey, what am I doing as someone who has that degree? Who was fortunate enough to do that. Like, granted, my friends and I have a small scholarship to help with someone at Howard, but like, there need like I need to do more, and I think that's like clearly the thing that we just need to like figure out is like how can we do more from like both a money perspective because that's the biggest barrier with a lot is it giving more money, but also in addition to the money that I can give, what time can I give someone locally? And like that's something that I just have not done. So I am part of the problem. That's not to say like if every single black man who had a little bit of money, who had a degree, if they all got involved, that might change stuff on the margins, but we won't know until we all try. And I think I've kind of challenged myself, I think, in this, or just said like, hey, like I can't identify this problem without with removing myself or not thinking that I am complicit in it happening as someone of economic and educational privilege. I just can't do that, or I think that would be disingenuous. Um, so I think there are a lot of reasons why. I think Henry hit it on the nose perfectly. I think it's also those people who do have those degrees, because like Henry knows, like there are bros in the barbershop who do have those degrees, but we don't really talk about like, hey, actually, I have a business, or hey, nah, like y'all need to go to school. It's usually we talk about sports or we talk about music or just like what's kind of popping culturally. But I think it's more incumbent upon, as you were talking about, Henry, like those dudes who have that degree to be like, yo, what y'all like, what's college looking like for y'all? Even like having those conversations, it might not be a big shift, but it's at least making it acceptable to have those conversations in this space. And I think
No,
even that makes it more real because we don't talk about that. Like we really don't talk about that.
I didn't mean to cut you off,
No,
but
go,
like
yeah, yeah.
you said, like the having that conversations here and like creating a space for black men to have this
Hmm.
conversation literally in the barbershop. Like the Anthony conversation kind of transitioned to like black figures in the
Hmm.
in access. Then it transitioned to like finance and managing finance because it was two people in there that like work in finance. And one of them, he was younger than I was. He was 28. He graduated from Morehouse. He managed like wealth accounts. Basically, he planned wealth. He doesn't deal with anybody less than like $10 million. So point in case of explaining all that is like just knowing that access right there for a little dude that's coming in the barbershop and just casually listening to this conversation and now like triggers his mind to some
Hmm.
degree. It's also literally my barber white hair's cut my hair is like, dang, bro, it's so crazy like how when I was growing up, we didn't have these type of conversations in the barbershop. We were always talking about sports and women and the
Yeah.
more
Hmm.
things.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
it just wasn't a conversation. Yeah, go ahead, Mackenzie.
Yeah, okay,
Ground
so
us.
I'm gonna jump in. I feel like I agree with everything y'all are saying, but so I'm gonna add this new point. That's something that I've personally been seeing, even when I spoke at career days. I feel like there's just a shift happening from like what you all were saying, kids want to get money, or
Hmm.
in general, kids want to get money and kind of get it quick without going through the work and stuff. And something that I found, I feel like more and more kids are trying to become creators and they're
Hmm.
seeing this creator economy and in their head it's a way to get quick money, but So I don't really know how to wrestle with that. When I spoke with at the career day, when I said I went to college, oh, you could tell the ears turned off immediately. Now, while that I do feel like was a socioeconomic thing, like I'm
Yeah.
not going to think of college because I know that I can't afford it.
Mhm.
But the fact that I would rather shoot videos on YouTube than go to school and get a degree. It just, I think that that's something that we're seeing along with there's been a shift in a lot of more kids doing, what are those degrees? Like becoming plumbers,
Yeah.
those type of
Trade, trade.
trade degrees. So I think that that's good. But I think overall, other than everything that you all said, because I do feel like at the end of the day, your mom, a woman telling a boy to do something, I feel like always comes better from somebody who looks like them, a
Mhm.
man.
Yeah.
But on top of that, I think like other than the traditional basketball trajectory or becoming a rapper, I think now I'm seeing so many more kids are following the Kai Cenats or following the Drewskis and are just seeing the content that they can create. But I want to like encourage them that each of those people have managers that are actually managing their money who went to school. And that's
And
like the thing I really like the people that you're, even when we talk about Anthony Edwards, the people around Anthony Edwards that are managing his money probably have degrees.
yeah, there's a classic Charles Barkley quote where he says, "I don't have a degree, but everybody who works for me does." And it's like a
Yeah.
classic. It's like it's a very
But
funny,
see,
honest
even
quote.
that makes it like then you take the kid with that mentality, well, I don't want to be the employee, I want to be the boss. And then it's like that thought that I can't work
Yeah,
for
and
someone, I
Who's-
want to be
who
my own.
introduces that idea to them though? That's what I'll say because like we only know the Anthony Edwards or the rapper or the Kai Cenat or the Drewski because they're mainstream and the media pushes them. We don't know the business manager or the finance guy or the
I don't think, not to cut you off, but we cannot keep blaming the media for this. Like social media is its own
I think
thing. There's
it's a
plenty
factor.
when
It's a
we talk
factor.
about it's a
Kenzie. I'm
fact. Now
sorry.
hold on, let me
It's a
finish.
factor, but it's not the
When
only. To your
you're
point,
talking,
I
let
agree.
me finish. When we're
No, I agree
talking
with you.
about the TikTokers or like social media, and I open my phone, I have access to so many more faces than just who's on the news. So when we had the educational department and that stuff happening earlier this year, there was plenty of creators who took and did the Hillman TikTok and were giving educational advice. So if you wanted to seek it out, you could. I think that like yes, the media plays a role. You can't stop boys from watching basketball and football, but I think that the in my opinion, we can't just keep blaming the media. Those are the mentors. Those are the people on the ground that have to change something. Like, yeah, we could blame the newscast, but newscasters highlight small business owners on a Sunday night. Maybe that's not the highlight or whatever.
But
The
also that
media,
audience doesn't watch the news, so like
yeah.
they could highlight it, but it's like they're the eyes
Mhm.
who need to see it are not
And then
watching.
there's
So
the
like,
other
yeah,
thing of like on social media in general, like negativity is more entertaining than what's real. Like watching Anthony Edwards play basketball is probably more entertaining than talking about going to college and turning in a test and doing all of these things. So it's like I think the best thing that we can do is everything that y'all said is mentorship. And but it's something that I think has to start at the beginning, like mentoring the babies. Like college should just be a no-brainer when you get to
and the
that
funny
point.
thing is that one thing I do want to add that I actually think is important is that I also think this is where like the actual element of actual schooling comes into this because I do think that we often like detach like, oh well, it's got to happen in like these cultural settings. It's like, no, well, actually, this child's going to spend most of their time like actually in school at a certain point. And I do even think it's like we have to, encourage, and this is where like the local politics comes down, and this is like part of the reason why Henry, you and I have been talking about this forever, and like paying attention to like who's on your school board, who's on these other things. Like, hey, can you talk to your school board about having like a 2 week videographer camp, or like actually figuring out ways to actually make school engaging? That's not to say that you need to like scrap the necessary curriculum, but you have to adjust to what is happening now, I feel like. And understanding that, like, hey, if more people want to be creators and more people want to be musicians, hey, here's audio production. Here's these other interesting skills that are actually tied to the thing that you're really interested in. That you might not be the person making the beat, but it needs to be mixed and edited by somebody that takes that might not even take a degree, but that is also setting you up to where you have a career. Or hey, you might be interested in content creation. Hey, here's actually how you edit a video. Here's actually how you take a still shot. Here's how you take different shots in the light. Or here's how you actually adjust your background to make sure, like, even like stuff like that to just make sure, like, hey, the things that you're actually interested in, there are levels to this, and education is going to be the thing to have you do levels to this. But even then, I think that the thing that I don't think that people have talked enough about is that, like, granted, my mother's a teacher, so like, teaching actually needs to be like a profession that one that Black people in general can be in and live a healthy life in terms of economically, but like that's a big barrier to actually not having Black men in the classroom. Black women too, is that we need to just simply pay teachers more. And
Did
that
I
if we
ever have a
actually, no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm like trying to think, did I ever have a black male teacher? And I really
I've
feel
had
like
maybe like
no.
five, maybe five, and I went to private
I've
school,
had
so
a
they were able to
few.
pay more,
I've
No.
had a few,
but they
and
were all transformative for me.
when I've had a few, I'll say less than five, and one especially played a very big
Hmm.
role in my
Same.
life, in terms of just like skill setting, figuring out college, so on and so forth. So like to Noah's point, I definitely think it is in the education system. And I mean, Black men aren't valued in the classroom. I can come up with so many examples to where like my teachers not bullied, but they would pick on Black men specifically to make them like a little uncomfortable or shy or not as smart. And I'm not saying that was the intention, but
I
you
mean,
get
it's bias. It's bias. I mean, that's it is. It's bias that you don't even know. And I think that like the prison to, I don't really like the term like, school to prison pipeline, but it's just, there's so much data in terms of
it's a real thing. It's
no,
a
no,
real
it is. It is. I think the phrase very much so oversimplifies. I think the way it takes place in discipline, but also like educational expectations. In that it's not only like, hey, are we more likely to go to detention, but we're more likely to teachers are more likely to recommend Black children in general, and more so Black men, to get tested, to be held back, even if they don't need to, and how even that decision to hold a child back if they don't need to can also play a role into education, their own concept of what this is. Like you have a child who's in school. Imagine how that feels for a young 6-year-old Black child. Hey, I'm always getting suspended, not necessarily for even anything that I'm doing, or now I'm being held back, so I'm not with my peers. And like even like understanding the emotional toll that that can then take to where school does not feel like a home for them. And I think we also need to like understand what that means. And I think to your point, Henry, like I had a Black male homeroom teacher, and he went to Morehouse, and granted, I was messing up in high school. I was not a good student, but he was the one to say like, no, like you actually can do this, and like, hey, like you're going to mess up. That's okay. Here is like the long term trajectory, but I wouldn't have known that if a white woman was not going to tell me that. A white man was not going to tell me that. A Black woman could have told me that. It might have landed differently because I think he understood, hey, I understand the thing that you're thinking through or going through or how you feel like, hey, school is hard. It's okay. Even that aspect of like understanding to like where, to your point, Henry, like even if there's a student, a Black male student who's not doing well, like, hey, that's okay to not, like, you're allowed to make mistakes. And I think even having that aspect, that also gets into like the social side of it. And then I think too often Black children in general, and this is not even male or women, a lot of them don't feel like they have the room for error. And I think even like educationally telling them like, hey, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to not have everything together. It's okay to get a C on this. Like that's not the end of the world. I think even like that aspect of understanding that I think is really key and often lost in this of like we just need more people giving these kids guidance about not only school but just life because I think that really frames their expectation. I don't know, no, Mackenzie.
No, I was just gonna say, so then I think that that pressure comes from that twice as good for half as much.
Hmm.
Because I
Yeah,
feel like, how do we teach our kids that then? Like, we have to teach them both. But like, I don't even think like as a Black person, you can escape that because unless you're in a Black school, like elementary school or Black thing, like if you're in a space like a little kid in an elementary school and the white teacher, it's kind of, I feel like it's already there, you
and the
know?
funny thing is it's that really thin line to where I
Mhm.
think it does put a lot of pressure, and I think all of us feel that in our we're all damn near 30 and we still feel that, but we're also still feeling the effects of that too. But also we have to understand probably is that like, hey, there are some people who are going to fall off of that pressure, and that's through no fault of their own. But then how are we helping them? And I think that's like the key, and I think that's the thing that's kind of been lost, and even the article didn't really hit at this as much as I wanted it to, of like, hey, what's it actually like for these current kids who have dealt with COVID, who have dealt with all these other things. I think there's even more of a cliff that's going to happen that we haven't even seen yet of like what happens to those black children, and specifically those black boys who weren't in the classroom for 2 years. That's what I think we need to start talking about now. And probably, Henry, that probably gives us people like you and I even more of incentive to say, like, hey, we just have to get involved in any way, whatever way that is, even if it's something small of like money or time. And that's probably what I would encourage other people who are like us upset about this numbers. Like we all just have to like figure out something, even if that's something small. Go into a high school and say, "Hey, is there an after school program I can help out at?" Um, I don't have all the answers, but maybe that's a start. And I think probably us starting is better than nothing, right? I don't
Yeah,
know.
Well,
I
like
agree.
speaking of time, my pledge is to like try to find some after school program to get involved with because that article did spike like a passion in me.
Yeah,
So that's my pledge, and I guess transitioning to time and black men spending their time. Cory Booker, he broke some time recently.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
Cory Booker broke the record for the longest Senate speech in history, speaking for 25 hours and 5 minutes. His record beat Senator, excuse me, Storm Thurmer, whatever that nigga name is, who protested in 1957 Civil Rights Act. Excuse me, uh, his
Sorry
Thurmer.
to that man.
no, no, not sorry to him. He was a piece of shit.
Definitely,
I
like
we
I don't care.
we don't need to pronounce his
uh,
name correctly. He's not in the
Booker
history books anymore. So
exactly. Booker's speech about the treat, it was basically focused on Trump, like current presidency, attacking the administration, Medicaid, Social Security, and other services. He really, really put his heart into that. I really respect what he did. I I hate how people were trying to say, "Oh, you guys are like going for this," but like literally,
yeah,
like I said previously, what can they really do besides bring awareness and push a message of this is not right. This is not how we operate. We're fighting him in the court. We're protesting as much as we can, and like he brought very much attention to that because like he broke a
he
record that
talks for a day.
know,
Talk, and I think that's the key thing, Mackenzie. I know you're. This is probably your. This is your beat here. I think the most interesting thing that I think of is like he sacrificed. He had to give an element of himself to do this. And I think more people need to figure that out. I respect it more because he said, you know what, I am going to sacrifice physically for this. And I think more Democrats need to think of how can I not, how I need to give something up here, whether it's my time, my money, my physical well being. He looked exhausted by the end of that. And I think more people need to take a page out of that playbook of like, hey, I need to sacrifice and he did it there. And I think more people need to take that lesson.
No, I agree. Like, I think that, I mean, while it was just funny seeing the clips of like him just like wailing or whatever, but like,
Yeah,
but no, I agree with you all. Like, I mean, there's nothing that they really can do. I'm glad somebody is up there on the podium taking up space and time because, like, that when that was released, no, you couldn't escape that. Like, you had to pay attention to what he was doing because it was everywhere. So I don't. I support him. I also still feel like this is. Oh, didn't he already run for president before?
yeah, in 2020.
I wouldn't be surprised if he was trying to do that again. Anytime these politicians make like a moment
see,
like that,
see, 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 this is when I have to
what?
do not go down that route of he has an alternative motive of none of that because
I mean, it's a personal thing. I'm not going to say him. I just feel like when anyone is stepping out there, I would assume that there is a long game being played. Do I think it's genuine though? For sure. I
It
definitely
is.
feel like it's genuine, like he's really into this. It's not like a
It could
facade
also
that I
serve
would
two
say like
purposes.
other people. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I really agree with what y'all said. I feel like the Democrats are trying. Shoot, Chuck Schumer was at church on Easter saying basically the same thing. Like that's also I was like, ugh, I don't like mixing church and politics, but he was saying that
however, you have to. That's the base of it, especially for Black people. If we talk about our leaders throughout the past,
Just not from him,
I'm
though.
not disagreeing. It was just
Just not from
it was
him.
unexpected. I wasn't ready for Easter. He could have came next Sunday. Like it just was a lot. But taking up space and
Or
time.
don't come just on Easter. Like,
Yes.
and also like, what are you doing for us? I think is that like we don't need to like, don't call us to action. What's
Oh,
your
this is what he
plan?
does. This is what
Your
he did.
plan?
So he's been friends with the pastor. He's been coming to the church every Sunday for like 28 years. But I will say why he really tied it in, and this is how I know you are a veteran politician, because he got up there and his whole connecting why he really was there was because he helped raise money for churches when it was the pandemic and like getting money and
Okay.
funding for small businesses. So that's what it was talking about. But to nodding to Cory Booker and like taking up space and time, Chuck was doing his job. And I was like, yeah, okay, thanks for the
I
reminder.
think that's what we have to realize about the Democrats. Like, they definitely are aware that they need to switch leadership and edge younger. How that happens, I don't really know. Noah can maybe explain that on another episode. However, I just I want to kind of just we've been beating them up. Okay, well, y'all been beating them up. I
And I think it's been
just
working.
give them the right. It
I think it's
has.
been working.
It has, and I think after the I feel like the Democrats, especially the younger ones, they're energized, they're focused, and they're letting us know that like they got our back a little bit.
Yeah, and like I said, I think and before we get to the last thing, I think the tenor is I think everyone has kind of collectively said like y'all are not doing enough. We're not going to criticize you for what you're doing. We're going to allow you to make mistakes, but just do something. I don't think we have criteria on what that is because we don't know either. And I think so far it has paid off. They're doing stuff. We just had there's a that immigration case with Kilmar Garcia. A senator just said, you know what, I'm gonna pull up. I'm gonna go across the country to pull up there, and he actually met with him. Good for him. Do shit like make noise. Say I'm not leaving the country till I meet with my someone who's from my state who's held here legally. Good. Like be loud, be vocal, and don't take no for an answer. And he didn't. And I think that's what more Democrats are now doing. Speaking of what people should do, last thing before we wrap up, because we have another special episode coming up. Al Sharpton and Target, the Target CEO Brian Connell met with Reverend Sharpton to discuss the company's decision to roll back DEI programs. This comes, as we talked about previously, with the Reverend Dr. Jamal Bryant organizing the 40-day boycott that's still in place. I have my thoughts about how we feel about how I personally feel about this. Um, I'm gonna let y'all go. How do we feel about Target CEO meeting with Al Sharpton?
Al Sharpton isn't a congressperson, right? Like that's because I'm just like, who's listening to Al Sharpton? No, for real.
I was gonna say
That's my
when did Al Sharpton become the voice of black people? Because I'm not trying to like maybe I should know this, maybe I shouldn't. Like y'all know I'd be like slipping my history sometimes, but like what he
even
not
older black people don't even be caring about Al
that's what I'm
Sharpton. That's
saying.
why
He
I'm
was
like,
always the
what?
showman. He was the showman. So with that being the case, Al Sharpton is not the representative of black people, and that's not the person you want to talk to. And Target know exactly what they're doing. They're like doing this political media
Checking a
What are
box.
they do? What are they like? So
They're
my thing is,
pandering. They're
but then what
pandering.
does the conversation entail?
And the funny thing is, that's what I was going to ask
Al
because I think
Sharpton gets the payout, and then he comes and says, "Hey, black people, our dollar meant something. Let's go shop back at Target." That's
and
what
I
they're,
think, and to
and I
your point,
wouldn't
Henry, I
be
think,
surprised.
and I think that's where we need like black journalists to get in his face and ask him, "What was your ask?"
Literally,
He has more to gain from you meeting with him than vice versa. There was an
exactly.
ask that either he made to I don't think there's anything he can the C Target CEO can ask of Al Sharpton. Like what can he do? But there was
Mhm.
definitely an ask that he had for the Target person. What was the purpose? What was the next? You're not just meeting with him in a vacuum. There's an ask somewhere. What was that ask? Was it to continue? Was it to reestablish the programs that you cut? Make more of a commitment? Like what does that look like? Like what's the next step for you,
And
or what
we
are you
haven't
asking
heard
them to
nothing.
do?
We haven't heard anything.
Crickets.
Why isn't he on the Breakfast Club? Isn't that the Black Media Brunch or whatever? Why
I
isn't he
mean,
talking about what happened? He loves to be in the news because soon as this boycott news era came out, 24 hours later, he's marching into Costco with a group of people. But we
The
haven't heard nothing. we have
Honestly, I'll say this. Like, I don't even think it should be Al Sharpton on the Breakfast Club. I should think it would be the Target CEO. You're the one that's in the hot seat. You should be
That's
the
that's
one to say,
that's
like,
that's too
Hey,
visible. He's not gonna do
I
that.
agree with you, but that's not gonna happen. Let's be
well,
realistic.
yes, it's
I
not gonna
will
happen. But
say
that's why I'm
Dr.
like,
Jamal Bryant upped the charge when that meeting came out. He started talking like,
mhm.
no, we're not backing down. Let's keep fighting, and I
I
commend him.
would have respected him calling on Jamal Bryant, honestly, so than Al Sharpton. Because like Al Sharpton is so like, who pays attention to this man
And I
anymore
th
for real?
and I think that's the problem is that I think it's even the validation of that. Hey, Target's interested in trying to figure this out, and it's like we don't give a damn. Like we still ain't going, and I think that's like that's where I think it's like Al Sharpton. Like, come on, dude. Like you could
Let
have
me
just
blow
held the
your mind a
line.
little bit though. I
What do you
think
say?
I said, let me blow your mind a little bit. I think that also speaks to like how these corporations value the black voice because why are you calling Al Sharpton?
Oh, there is no value. If you're calling Al Sharpton to speak for like there's no because
Oh,
you are
you
wrong.
get thanks for saying it because that's
Yeah,
what Target
there's
said when they
no
did
No, I
that.
mean you
no.
just want the appearance of trying to
Yeah.
care, and I think that's the thing is like if we had Al Sharpton here, we would be like you realize that like they're just using you to like kind of show face. Like, what are
I
you?
don't know what question I would ask Al Sharpton right now. Like I don't even like what?
Honestly, just give me the replay. Give me the minutes. Give me the minutes. I
It's
want
not gonna be anything
There's
though.
no
That's not
minutes.
like
There's no minutes. There's no
how
minutes.
long did the meeting have last?
We
shit. I
won't
mean, but
know.
what's the
We'll never know.
context? Like I
No,
don't
we'll
care
never
how long
know.
it was. It wasn't nothing.
I
So
also want to know, just before we wrap up, who asked who? I think that is very key because I actually would not be shocked if Al Sharpton asked Target.
oh
I wouldn't,
gosh, I
I
would
wouldn't be
hope it's
That
the
shocked
makes
other
my
way.
stomach hurt. That makes my
That's
stomach hurt.
cringe if he
because
reached
Yeah.
out.
if I'm Target, why would I even want to do this personally? If I'm Target, why
Oh,
would I want to do this?
I would
But
like their stock has been plummeting a bit. So like
oh, the man to call to save the stock was Al Sharpton. That's
I'm
hilarious.
not saying that.
No, that's
Saying
what they
you,
said.
you know I'm not a target
No,
apologist.
I'm saying that's what they said. The person to come save them was Al
people who make
Sharpton.
millions of dollars said, you know what? You know how we save this? Someone get Al Sharpton. Fine. What?
That's what I'm telling you when it comes to like
But that also
their
says they had no black people
their
in the room because every black
their
person in that room would have
actual
been like,
if they were actually wanting to do anything, they would know how to make the play. However, yeah, they didn't make that play. So
well, we are going to make a play. This is a shorter episode because we have something special geared up. So be sure to follow us once again on all of our social media at WRGO Pod. Be sure to like, listen, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. That includes YouTube and all audio formats. Thank you.